Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everyone joining us across different time zone and across different or in corner of the world. My name is Nazila Jamshidi, and I will be moderating today's discussion on behalf of Bahrain Initiative for Development. It's an honor to welcome you to this very, very timely and very deeply necessary conversation, which will be focusing on envisioning Afghanistan trajectory under the Taliban rule. As we all are watching, hearing, and reading every day, Afghanistan today stands at a crossroad, but not a neutral one, as we all can see in the news and from people on the ground. So it's a crossroad shaped by very, very deliberate policy choices, choices that are redefining who's allowed to learn, who's allowed to work, and ultimately who's allowed to exist as a full human being in the public life. So, since the tragic event of 2021, we have witnessed two parallel and deeply interconnected processes unfolding in front of our eyes in Afghanistan. So, on one side, we have girls and women have been systematically erased. They are barred from secondary and higher education. They are excluded from most profession and confined to invisibility. And that is very sad and tragic. On the other side, we have boys who are being immersed in an education in a kind of an education system that increasingly dominated by ideological indoctrination, where we are, as we all know, critical thinking, science, arts, and all human rights principles are vanished and they are replaced by a singular worldview and the one that the Taliban regime is defining. So there are, as we all know, these are not isolated human rights violation. I'm a human rights person, and I don't call it like human rights violation by itself. They represent a structural transformation for Afghan society, the one that has a profound political, economic, and security implication, not only on Afghanistan, but for the region and the beyond. And that is threatening. When over 3 million girls are denied education, the cost is not a personal tragedy, it's a national disaster. And UNESCO estimated billions in lost economic potential. So, community lost teachers, doctors, engineers, and leaders before they even allowed to exist. Families fracture and mental health crises deepen. Early and forced marriage are rising dramatically. At the same time, the exponential expansion of the state-backed, or I better to say Taliban-backed madrasa, now numbering in the tens of thousands, and these are combined with the removal of a lot of other subjects that create what many experts nowadays they describe the situation as the cheapest and largest recruitment pipeline that extremist groups have ever seen in decades. So this is kind of a historic thing. So history shows us that radicalization doesn't remain contained within the borders. It travels. It travels through violence, through instability and displacement. And what we are confronting right now is not simply a woman's issue, is not an education crisis either. It's a question of national security, regional stability, and global responsibility. So, although the situation is really, really bad, yet despite the gravity of the moment, international engagement has been really fragmented. I personally have been in many international platforms and observed, yes, I observed condemnation exists, but coherence doesn't exist. So what I saw was the discussion of humanitarian aid are separated from discussion of gender apartheid. And that is sad for a humanitarian person like myself. Counterterrorism is discussed, but without a reference to educational system that fits this counterterrorism. And Afghan voices, especially those inside the country, are frequently treated as a secondary to the calculation, and that is not fair. So this webinar aims to challenge the fragmentation. So today we aim to integrate political, security, economic, and societal lens to better understand Afghanistan trajectory under the Taliban or Afghanistan today's situation. We will ask, of course, we have very knowledgeable panelists in this webinar. And of course, we are going to ask very difficult questions. So in this webinar today, we are going to ask our panelists to talk about international engagement, to be turned in a real leverage. What it involves. We are going to focus on why has the world hesitated to name what is really happening to Afghan women, and that is gender apartheid. And what would change it if they name it? We are going to talk about long-term consequences of raising a generation where one half of the society is erased and the other half is ideologically engineered. And this is dangerous. So also, I should note that the central to this conversation is our commitment to amplifying Afghan voices, women, educators, youth, and scholars whose lived experiences challenge the narrative. It has always did. So despite the extraordinary repression, as we all are witnessing, Afghan society has not surrounded. Underground classroom continue. Intellectual defining persist, and women continue advocating for the rights and dignity of their people in different platforms, in different international stages. So we are honored to be joining today by a very exceptional panel of experts and practitioners, individuals who bring decades, years of experience in security, in education, policy, and Afghan history. So these insights will help us move a little bit beyond the diagnosis and move toward pathways for pipeline section, kind of pipeline action to the cure. So this is not the space of course, I should mention, this is not a space for despair, but neither it is a space for denial. It's a space for clarity, for honesty, and bring some responsibility to the table. As we begin, I invite all participants to approach this discussion with humility and recognizing that what's at stake is not only Afghanistan's future, but the global thing. It really is a global thing. And thank you for being part of this very, very critical question. So I don't want to take a lot of time because my talks is not important. We have an exceptional panelist here and we want to hear from them.